In this video, we're going to go ahead and stub out a couple new projects. So basically what I need is a console application that is going to be used for code generation purposes and I guess whatever sort of command liney type things we might need in the future. And then we're going to create another project that's going to contain the generated code for whatever purpose that we have, really. In this case, it's going to be used for our component interfaces, though in the future we're going to be writing a serializer that will be using generated code. So yes, it will be an addition of 2 more projects to the solution. Solution does have quite a few projects in it already, but to be honest, I mean, they're pretty much all necessary at this point, so I don't feel too terrible about that. The reason I want to go ahead and have my generated code be in its own assembly is because I'm going to be using that generated interface code for both my client project as well as my server project. So because I want to share it between 2 projects and I don't want to compile it twice, we will create its own assembly for that. So yeah, stuff and things. Let's start off with putting together our tools project. So I'm going to go ahead and organize this inside the build folder I have in my solution. Remember, this build folder isn't a folder that actually exists on the hard drive. It's just a way the Solution Explorer is going to show our projects. So even though I'm going to right-click the build folder, select add, select new project, it's still going to place the project in the project root as sibling folders to the rest of the other projects. Let's go ahead and select Windows Desktop Console Application. So it's going to look, your new project dialog box is going to look a little bit different in Visual Studio 2013. I hope all of you guys have upgraded by now because it's free. It's free, it works with ReSharper. There's no reason to use the 2012 Express editions anymore or the 2013 Express editions, which I can't remember if there were. I'm pretty sure they had them. Either way, let's go ahead and select that. Let's make sure our .NET Framework version is set to the latest one right there, 451. And for the name of it, I'm just going to go with Buzz MMO Tools for this project. Hit OK, and of course a directory already exists for some reason, so let's go ahead and pause the video and I'll get rid of that directory. Alright, so let's go hit OK harder this time. And we get a console application, not that exciting. Let's go ahead and go to the references, right-click references, select add reference. We want to go ahead and make sure we have a reference to buzzmmo.base. The reason for that is because we need to be able to list all of the component interfaces that are defined in buzzmmo.base in order to do the code generation. This is also the reason why we're creating a console application instead of hooking into the build process. You might think, well, we already have this build.tasks project that hooks into MS Build. Why can't we use this and integrate into like a post-build step or a pre-build step? Well, the reason is, like I said in a previous video, we need buzzmmo.base.dll to be loaded into our app domain so that we can scan for interfaces, so that we can generate our code. Well, the problem with that is when you load an assembly into an app domain, you cannot unload that assembly out of that app domain. And due to the way MS Build runs, that is just not going to work. It's going to lock the file, it's going to cause problems, and the world will end. So instead what I'm doing is I'm effectively creating my own project, my own tools project, which will be its own app domain. So we'll load up the assembly in our own app domain, then once the tool is done generating code, it will stop and everything will be happy. So yeah, I want to point out, yes, it is possible to create a separate app domain, and we could use that as a technique for loading and unloading assemblies dynamically, but that would just be a real pain. It's much easier to create this console application. Okay, so next up in my buzzmmo.tools, I will go ahead and I'm going to create a class real fast. I'm going to create a class and I'm going to call it generate commands. And hit enter. And I'm just going to leave this class how it is, and we'll go ahead and fill in a little bit of it in a moment here. For the program.cs itself, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say var CLI equals new command line interface, which of course comes from BuzzMMO base infrastructure CLI. Then I'm going to say var generate commands equals new generate commands. Then I'm going to say CLI, well, yes, I'm going to say CLI.register command object, and I'm going to pass in a closure which points to generate commands. Then I'm going to open up a try block and say CLI.execute args, and then catch exception E, and then console dot, let's just do foreground color. Let's do dark red for the foreground color, and then let's say console.writeLine E, and then just dot message. So that'll print out an exception if a command wasn't found, or if you didn't specify the right parameters, or an exception was thrown or whatever, it'll print that out for us. So that'll be awesome. Oh, and then we'll probably want to go ahead and we'll have change the return type of main to int, and go ahead and return like a 1. And then in the try block, return a 0. So that'll just indicate to whoever invoked this program that there was an error. All right, that's our program. I guess I can go ahead and make the class program. Oh, come on. Yes, I know it's never instantiated, ReSharper. Whatever. I really don't like warnings, but that's just a hint. It's not a warning, so it doesn't count, I guess. Okay, so then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to hop over into the generate commands class, and I'm going to give it a CLI name of generate, and then I'm going to write a public void, and we're going to have a something. How about public void component interfaces? And it's going to take a string output file path. Then, of course, I'm going to give it a CLI name of component dash interfaces. And for the actual logic of this command, I'm simply going to say console.writeLine, hey there, and then print out the output. Output file path. Let's just do that for this time. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hit F6, and then I'm going to go ahead and hit Alt space. I have a tool installed, an extension installed. I can't remember what it's called. It's like open command line from here or something. You can go find it on the Visual Studio Gallery, and it allows me to just hit Alt space and magically have a command line window open for me in the right folder. If you don't have such a plugin installed, of course, you can always right click on the project, open up in Explorer, wherever that went. It's probably in the bottom. Open an Explorer, hop over to your bin folder, your debug folder, hold down shift, right click the white space, and select open command window here. Either way, the point is we need to open up a command window to this, just to test this. Okay, so we'll go ahead and cd bin, cd debug, and I'll go ahead and make sure it's built. Always hit F6 to make sure that the application is built. And now I'm going to say buzzmmo.tools, and then I'm going to pass in some stuff, and I get not enough arguments, and everything is red. I overlooked the fact that when you change the console color, it doesn't re-change back when the program ends. So let's fix that real fast. I'm going to go ahead and jump back over into program.cs. I'm going to say inside the catch block, I'm going to say old color equals console.foreground color, and then after I'm done writing the line, I'll say console.foreground color equals old color. Then I'll hit F6. I'm going to go ahead and restart this command line prompt because it kind of got ruined there. And restart that, bin debug, and go ahead and run that. And there we go. All right, so error, not enough arguments. So let's pass in some garbage. Command blah, 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 not found. That's good. Now let's go ahead and try to generate our component interfaces. So I'm going to say generate component interfaces. And it says arguments must be the same size as parameters. We can definitely work on these error messages later. They're not great, but the point is you guys are seeing this kind of work now, and we see that we're not getting any crashes when we put an invalid input. So at least we have the right checks for errors. And then I'll go ahead and pass in like C test generated.cs and hit enter. And hey, look at that right there. Hey there, C test generated.cs. Okay, so before we hop out of the tools, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to replace the implementation of component interfaces with something else. I'm going to say file dot write all text, and I'll say this is a generated file, and I will, whoops, path is first, isn't it? So I'll say output. Okay, so basically all I'm doing here is the code now. What it does is it writes a comment to wherever we specified with the output file path. So not that exciting, but it'll make us able to test that our tools project is getting properly integrated into the build pipeline as we go along. Okay, I do want to fix this though real fast. There we go. I disabled the fact that that wasn't used, so that don't get the warning. I hate warnings. Maybe move that to the top of the file. Anyway, so and that is our buzzmmo.tools project. So now what we ought to do is we have to write our generated code project. Code that is generated based off the contents of buzzmmo.base. So this is generated code that's going to be shared between the client and the server. That's the only purpose for this assembly. So I'm going to right-click buzzmmo, select add, new project. This time I'm going to select a class library, and I'm going to, of course, I'm going to take the .NET framework, and I'm going to plop it all the way back down to 3.5, because that's going to be the furthest that's supported by Unity. And since the client is going to have to be, or the client's going to import this project, and it's used by Unity, then we'll have some problems. I really am just wishing they upgrade their .NET platform. This is getting annoying. Anyway, so for the name, it's going to be buzzmmo.base.generated. Generated. Hit OK. Oh, go away, MySQL. And let's go ahead and remove class1.cs because we won't need it. And let's go ahead and write out this this project. So what's it going to do, really? Well, all it's going to do is it's going to reference buzzmmo.base. So I'm going to right-click references, select add reference, select buzzmmo.base. Then what it's going to do is it's going to have a post-build step. And the post-build step is simply going to be responsible for invoking my tool and generating code. So the easiest way to put together a post-build step is to right-click the project, select unload project, which will allow us to edit the csproj file itself. Then right-click the unloaded project and select edit the csproj. And then all the way at the bottom of the csproj, we have this commented out stuff right here. So let's go ahead and uncomment it out by, I'm going to take this, this end comment here and delete it. Then I'm going to go ahead and delete the top comment. So now we have our before build and our after build. So what we want to do is before we build, I want to invoke my tool to generate the component interfaces. So what's going to happen is the buzzmmo base project, if that ever changes and we recompile, our buzzmmo base generated project will be built because the generated project depends on the base project. So after the base project is built, then this before build target is invoked. And then that will allow us to actually modify the code inside of BuzzMMO base generated before it's compiled. So that's really cool. So basically all we're going to do is we're going to say exec, and we're going to say exec command equals, the exec task, all that does is execute something as if it were a command line, as if we're invoking something from the command prompt. So then I'm going to say ms build this directory, or sorry, ms build, what is it, this file directory. Then we're going to / backup. Then we're going to go into buzzmmo.tools /bin / variable configuration, which is our debugger or release config, / buzzmmo.tools.exe. Then I'm going to pass in my parameters, which is the task name. The task name is generate component interfaces. Then I now need to pass in the path to where I want to generate the component interface. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to escape 2 quotes. Well, actually no. I'm going to change my quotes, my main quotes, to single quotes. So I just changed this entire exec command equals attribute to using single quotes. And the reason I'm doing that is so that I can use double quotes right here. And then inside of these double quotes, I'm basically going to pass in the path to where I want the generated file to be. In this case, it's simply going to be ms build this file directory. Then outside of the variable, I'm going to say / generated, or let's just do component interfaces.cs. All right, so yeah, that's our post-build step, or pre-build step. So I'm going to exit full screen. I am going to do another interesting thing here, though. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to recompile or reload the generated project by right-clicking and selecting Reload Project, and I'll hit yes to this dialog. And then I'm going to do something interesting. So we know that buzzmmo.base is going to be built before and compiled before buzzmmo.base.generated. But buzzmmo.base.generated doesn't actually perform the code generation. That happens in our buzzmmo.tools project, which means we need to be guaranteed that the buzzmmo.tools command line utility is compiled before the buzzmmo base generated project is. Because otherwise, let's say that we update our tools, that we change the way that things are generated. Let's say that the buzzmmo.base didn't even get compiled and sent back into the buzzmmo base tools project, so it's not even aware of the new interfaces. Basically, we need to make sure that the buzzmmo.tools is compiled before the buzzmmo base generated. And in Visual Studio, that's really easy to do. What we can do here is we can right-click buzzmmo base generated and come over here to build dependencies and select project dependencies. And I can go and scroll down to tools and I can check that. And what that's going to do is that's going to modify the build order so that my buzzmmo base generated always comes after the buzzmmo tools. So make sure that's selected. Otherwise, you'll have to do compilations twice in order to get the new interfaces sometimes, because at that point, if you don't specify this project dependency, the behavior is undefined and may work sometimes, may not work other times. And as programmers, that's unacceptable. All right, we'll hit OK. And we'll go ahead and compile. So I'm going to hit F6, and we get a build succeeded. Then what I'm going to do here is on the buzzmmo base generated, I'm going to select this project, and I'm going to select Show All Files up here in my Solution Explorer. Show All Files shows all of the files that aren't yet added to the project itself, but exist on the file system. And look at what we have there. Component interfaces.cs. So let's go ahead and make sure that component interfaces.cs is added into our project so that it's part of the compilation. So we'll right-click component interfaces, and we'll select Include in Project. Now that we're done doing that, I'm going to come back up here to the Solution Explorer and uncheck Show All Files, because I don't want to see the bin and OBJ folders at all. And if we open up Component Interfaces, check that out. This is a generated file. Yeah. Stuff and things. Let's do something a little bit more exciting, though, just to prove to you guys that this is working before we move on to the next step. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to, inside of my generated commands, you guys don't have to do this because we're going to be scrapping this code anyway. I just want to show you guys real fast that this is working the way it needs to be. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say for each var type in @domain dot current domain dot get assemblies dot select many t goes into t dot get types. Then I'm going to say if type dot get custom attribute, or sorry, get custom attributes type of component interface attribute, don't inherit, although that doesn't really matter, dot any. And actually, hold on, I'm going to make this in, I have to open up a stream writer, don't I? Using var writer equals new stream writer, output file path, open up some curlies, although those aren't necessary, and then I'm going to say writer.writeLine, passing in type dot, or let's just do comment, and then placeholder filled in type dot full name. All right, so now I'm going to hit F6, and now I get a warning. I get a warning saying my component interfaces.cs has been modified. Now, because the only reason I get this warning is because I have that file already open. So let's go ahead and hit yes to reload it. And now let's come back to component interfaces.cs and look at that. The two component interfaces we have got properly loaded. Let's do one more thing here. If I come over here to BuzzMMO base, open up components, open up systems, let's right click, hit add, go to new item. I'm going to select an interface. Let's call this, I don't know, character select system. And we'll say iCharacter select system server. And we'll make sure this is a public interface. And then a public interface iCharacter select system client. Make sure that follows along with that. That does. Let's go ahead and give these both component interface attributes. And then let's hit F6. And hit yes to reload. And check that out. We now have our interfaces. They've been properly detected by the code, and everything seems to be working. Our code is now being generated. So, well, not really, because this is kind of useless code. It's just a couple comments. But I mean, we now have a framework in place to perform our code generation. So actually writing the code generation is going to be a bit of a pain. It's going to be a little bit long-winded, but we kind of need to do it if we want to make sure this works on iOS and IL2 CPP. But anyway, we'll go ahead and we'll do that in the next video, and we'll see you guys then.